I think there's just been a big shift as a whole. I'm gonna go from kind of the macro down to the micro level. From the macro level, I find that there's a big demand for people wanting wines that are accessible. People don't want to have to hold on to a wine for 10, 15 years before opening the bottle and enjoying it. They want something that's where the fruit is open, where the fruit's integrated in the wine, and all the great elements of wine that where there's a sense of terroir and that there's a sense of complexity, and people want everything right away. So I think that there's been this push and almost pressure from the market towards growers and producers to make wines. I'm specifically talking about the reds that are much more fruit forward and easier to approach earlier on. Okay, and then so past that, because there's been this pressure, it's also forced us in a very, very good way to say, okay, well, how can we approach, our growing, and then how can we approach harvesting and sorting, and then how can we approach the winemaking in order to make wines that are different, because we enjoy drinking wines from Beaujolais, we enjoy drinking wines from Burgundy, and how can we make wines that are inspired by these other areas while still remaining true to the terroirs from which that the grapes are coming from? So that there's been this big push for us to evolve to the market around us, and then at the same time, we're also wanting to get closer to a certain style that I find to be much more ethereal. That's the word that I think I really want to focus on. That brings us back to this purity, that brings us back to the simplicity of the fruit, and yet the complexity of the fruit when handled in the right way. So with those different things said, I think that it's been a natural evolution, because when I hopped on board with working with Romain, sure, his style was different. I think that there was a little bit more extraction going on, and we both said, hey, let's experiment with maybe making a couple wines that were doing it the opposite way, where we're doing a little bit less and seeing how that pulls out that identity of terroir or not. And we found in the process of doing it over several vintages that we're making wines that had much more of they were much more approachable. They gained in finesse. And we were understanding, I think, the elements of Cabernet Franc that historically people have shied away from. And then all of a sudden people are tasting and they're like, wow, like this is interesting. Like this is definitely notable. So that's kind of from a macro and a micro level of kind of what's happened.
What are those specific elements of Cab Franc that people have shied away from?
Underripeness, I think. And underripeness is coming, I think, historically from a lot of people trying to just too much yield that they're looking for, not knowing how to pass the underripeness, then how to extract. So they're trying to pull out too much tannin, because historically people have wanted to have wines that they were able to put in their cellar for 10, 15 years and for it to still be good after. So if you're wanting to make those type of wines, you have to pull out the tannin to be able to wine to have that element in it to protect it for that shelf life. So I think that there's been this side of Cabernet Franc that's been misunderstood, which is like green, which is very abrasive in texture, which is bitter. That, if, as I mentioned before, if it's made and approached in the right way, in a respectful way, it won't.
What did you change for farming or for sorting to get to this more ethereal Cab Franc?
That's a great question. Farming, in terms of, it was a lot around the grass management. You have to understand that when the grass is a great element, because we are farming everything organically. So we've got to have a certain amount of grass in our vineyards, because it is a certain haven for certain biodiversity, certain microorganisms. It's a question of how much and when do we tolerate it in the vineyard, in order for the vines to have everything that they need in terms of nutrients and water at different points in their cycle. So what that came down to was, I think, which was a grass management that was a little bit more rigorous in the beginning part of the cycle. So from March until mid-June, late June, when after that point, the vines don't really have as much of a need for nitrogen. And so once that need for nitrogen drops off, you can allow the grass to come back. And then you're looking at literally another 9 more months when the grass can completely be existent in the vineyards and host, that those populations on microorganisms and forms of biodiversity. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that's true. So then the sorting table?
Sorting table. So sorting hasn't changed a whole lot in the sense that we are, never, of course, working with botrytis for whites, never for reds. Cabernet Franc has gifts us with, because it has a thicker skin, gifts us with not a whole lot of problems with rot. So we're not having to sort through a lot of our Cabernet. Once it comes through, what we're sorting through is much more grapes that are underripe. So some of the issues that we're experiencing with climate change is that we're having one side of the cluster that's ripening really well because it's exposed to the sun, and then the other side, the interior side of that's facing where the inside of the vine is a lot less ripe. And so you might have certain parts of the cluster that are ripe and others that are not. That brings a whole other headache for us. But so that's where the sorting table for Cabernet Franc becomes interesting.